and I'd like to welcome you all to an interview and a conversation between two sensational people. Firstly, we're going to start with Gerard Raymond, who has an extensive global career and has had multiple teachers throughout that time, and his impact that he has, what he has experienced throughout this time, he's now actually wanting to pay it forward, if you would like, in his experience and coaching areas. So who we have today is Vicky Yapkor, who first met Gerard as a fresh 22-year-old and was just entering the workforce and was mentored by Gerard, and is now using all of the learnings and experience that she gleaned over this impactful time, and today is a business owner in the healing industry and uses on a daily basis a lot of the teachings by Gerard, and wanted as gratitude to have this conversation to show others what's possible today in the coaching space. So let me open it up to you, Gerard. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Would you like to start by telling a bit about yourself and where you've been and where you're heading to?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, I've lived and worked overseas for the last 30 years, the last 8 basically running a global business with offices throughout the UK, Europe, the United States and Asia in the beauty industry. But I think the most important thing was the knowledge you pick up and the knowledge you can share in developing people, and the fact that the only way you get things done in this world is through others. It takes a team of people to be able to drive growth and to achieve objectives that people pursue. So to do that, it was that experience that really has paid off. And with COVID, one reassesses one's priorities. And so I've returned to Australia now at 65. So it's time for me to take on a different course. And the future for me is really about coaching and sharing with people who are starting to develop their career, and to share those experiences garnered from the many cultures, the geographies, and the challenges one picks up on an international stage.
Fantastic. And what are you up to these days?
Well, these days I'm just doing a little bit of coaching, helping out a couple of people that I've come to know, and quite enjoying that, and realizing also that it's not a one-size-fits-all. Mm-hmm. So these are individuals that you have to understand. They all face different challenges. So it's not a simple playbook where you change the dates and names on the slides, but it's more personal one-on-one coaching experience where you take that person through a journey. And that's not something that you do in 1 or 2 months. It's normally a minimum period of between 12 to 18 months that one has to go through that, especially if you're starting a career, if you're in the early stages of your career. That's fundamentally important to do it in that manner.
Sure, absolutely. And could you tell us about some of the areas that you found particularly fulfilling within this coaching space?
Well, I think the really important part is that it's twofold. One, apart from a selfish point of view, sharing one's experiences, but I think the more important part from who the recipient is that a lot of the challenges they face you can relate to. And you can be a very objective sounding board, because none of us are really that objective. We're in our own little cocoon, and as a consequence, we only see things through one prism. And having somebody else who does not have a vested interest in that particular situation, they can play a very objective role in saying, well, Have you thought about it from this perspective? Have you sought to understand what the issues are from the other stakeholders? What does that mean to you? Because sometimes we tend to focus on things that are driven by our own personal passions rather than what is the objective for the group or the team or the organization as a whole. You can bring it back to your own situation, of course, because let's face it, we're all selfish. It's what's in it for me. But if you don't work within that framework of realizing these are an overall objective to be achieved for an overall group, then it's not going to work out.
Absolutely. Could you touch on some of the personal challenges that you're alluding to?
I mean, a lot of it is basically with people, it falls down into issues of confidence, where they have their own agendas, timeframes, but also their own levels of insecurity, whether we want to admit it or not. We all have our issues there. The other big areas is confrontation, which is sort of like this terrible thing, you know, confronting people. But I prefer to use the words engaging with others to see their perspective, because, you know, I think if you look at where people have made progress in the world, it's where people have come with very diverse points of view, but with each party seeking to understand the other person's perspective, you can find common ground. And from common ground, you can always build to that objective. So that's the most fulfilling part. It's really working to unlock that. It's almost like finding your way through a maze. You know, you get frustrated at the start, but then when you find the objective at the center of the maze, it's quite rewarding, and it unlocks this personal fulfillment for the persons involved.
Sure. And so then using the work that you do with personal challenges, how does that then impact their position and their role in the company? Does it make or break?
I think it helps them definitely. I mean, there's one example where I'm currently working with someone where managing a team of people where the objectives keep getting missed. And, you know, do I confront that? How does that make them feel? How do I balance that perspective of, you know, confronting the person about them not fulfilling their role, but also trying to be a good leader. So it's finding those balances of, you know, having those honest conversations, and they don't have to be a negative outcome, because it can be how you phrase questions, how you seek to understand. Can you help me understand, rather than why are you not always missing your deadlines, if you know what I mean? So can you help me understand? What can I do to support you? Well, you know, but not at the same time taking on the task to help that particular individual, but rather to say, it is your responsibility. And if you do this, these are the skills you will pick up. This is the advantage. In other words, what's in it for you, but making sure you don't take on the other person's problem, because in the environment we're working in together, we have to rely on each other, and each person within that group has to do their task in order to deliver their goals.
Yeah. So how does someone choose a coach? What are they looking for in particular?
Well, I think it's difficult. I mean, you know, none of us, I mean, I remember when I first started my career, I mean, hey, I knew everything. I don't need a coach, but I was very fortunate to have some great leaders I work with that, you know, taught me and gave me the incidences, recognizing my personality, the fact that I was, you know, ambitious, wanted to get there in a hurry, but at the same time, pacing to ensure that you picked up the right skills as you move through. So I think, how do you recognize a coach? I think first thing is understanding and empathy and values. You know, I think you've got to relate to that person. If you meet somebody and you can't relate to that person, then it doesn't matter how greatly skilled they are as a coach, it's just not going to work. So it's having that first initial understanding of empathy, values, and the ability to have a conversation, because it shouldn't be hard work. It should be, well, these are the things we need to do. And also recognizing that it doesn't work on a clock. There can't be a prescribed, okay, I'm here 30 minutes to coach you, or 60 minutes to coach you. Sometimes the coaching sessions could be 10 or 15 minutes. And other times they could go for a couple of hours, depending on the issues and, what the problem is, or the objectives you're trying to overcome. And they can't be every Monday at 2:00 in the afternoon. It has to happen when it's fresh and it's alive. So it's not something that's, compartmentalized. It is fluid. And I think it is that recognition that comes through. And then once you've got that, it becomes the trust and respect, where both parties have to respect each other. It can't be a lecture. Okay, I've got 40 years of experience, you've only got 5. It isn't, because I think the thing is, and what I've also always realized in my career, I've actually learned from the people I'm working with, because they give you a different perspective. So it works both ways, so it's not a case of I'm here to teach you and coach you, but it's a mutual thing. So you learn from each other.
Yeah, a two-way conversation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's bring into the conversation Vicky, who was a fresh-faced 22-year-old, and not much.
Not sure about the face, but
other than she's running.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed at all. She's running a very successful healing business. Gerard, have you noticed any differences in Vicky?
Well, I hadn't seen Vicky for 20 odd years, almost 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
And we caught up in Adelaide when I was there to visit my nephew. And, no, she hasn't changed. She's still the same. Physically in appearance, anyway, she hasn't aged, but clearly more mature, dealing with more complex issues. And I'm sort of touched that she considers me the way she does. Whereas I've never taken myself too seriously on that part.
That is a real tribute to you, that she holds you in such high regard 20 years plus later, and continuously refers to you, which is evident of the relationship that you obviously created between the two of you. And as you said, it's not a thing that fits within a formula of half an hour every week, or but it's obviously transcending time, and still impacting with the learnings that she received and the experiences. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's a mystery. There you go.
I think it's credit to you both.
No, absolute credit, because what Gerard did, which I didn't realize he did at that point in time, being that fresh face, impressionable person that I was, that he was planting lots and lots of seeds, of which, as I moved on in life, there were other environments that allowed certain things to blossom, to come through. And and now that I've got my own business, and then managing people and having been in high positions in corporate has also allowed me to go, oh yeah, actually Gerard taught me that. Simple things like he got us involved as management trainees to the interviewing process. And at that point in time, as a young person, I was like, what is he even thinking? Why is he pulling us out from our project time to look at resumes and be a part of that interview process with new management trainees? And this is years later that I found, you're not reading the words of what this person has done. You're reading really in between the lines of their experiences. And he very cleverly slipped that in. And I owe a lot of my ability to read people's body language to this man. He used to walk past meeting rooms and then he'll be like, was that the conversation that was happening? That didn't land well, did it? I went, how do you know? You just walk past. And he's like, yeah, body language. And it's these seeds that he planted in there that then I was curious enough, I guess, to nurture that, to grow that, to allow that to blossom, that I look back and go, those were the roots. Yeah, so he holds a really, really high place in my heart, because I certainly didn't know I needed a coach at that point in time.
How does one know when they need a coach? Or does one ever know?
I would say at that point, I didn't even know that there's a thing called coach, right? Yeah. Fresh out of uni, just kind of like, okay, I'm here to impress. But at the interview, he probably can't remember this either, because he grilled me at the interview. And at the end of it, I was kind of sweating bricks. And he said, look, if you join us, I'll coach you. I was like, okay, don't know what that means. Fine. But I was keen enough to, and curious enough to join. And so coming back to that question, I don't even know that at that point in time, consciously, I even knew that I needed a coach. Now on a different level, I think, because the coaching industry has really, taken flight. Almost everyone believes that they need some form of support and help, in whatever shape and form. So yeah, I think to answer that question better, I believe from my perspective, if a person has the mindset that they're always learning, then they would seek a coach out. As Gerard mentioned just then, it's that recognition that your point of view is just your point of view. If you're open enough, curious enough to see, then go, actually, what about from the other perspective? Those will be the cues that, yeah, be nice to hear it from someone else, someone more experienced.
With other filters as well. Yes,
with other filters, or be able to even remove some of the filters that you have.
And the blindsiding as well.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Would you say, Vicky, that Gerard's coaching has impacted your current business?
100%. 100%, because one of the key things that he had me really look at such a young age was showing up authentically. And that is something you'd apply every day in any business, actually. And in saying that, it's not just showing up as everything is perfect, everything's working. He showed me that it is important to be vulnerable. Through the conversations that we had, sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes pleasant, sometimes not. That then you realize, when you are willing to look at your stuff, really look at them, you can show up authentically. And my clients, certainly many of them, feedback that that's what they love about what I am and what I be, because they, it's quite common to go to a healer, practitioner, and you think they've got everything sorted out. But there I'm going, actually, I've got my own skeletons in the closet, things I'm still working through. I cry in front of them when we talk about stuff that touches me. And so, yeah, that is 100% that keeps showing up every day.
What are some more qualities that you've found that Gerard has really contributed to you and your business and your life?
Forgiveness. Yeah, forgiveness is a big thing because it's around forgiving self, being kind to self, kind enough to accept, well, I'm not that great in this area. Maybe this is where I need help. What else? Yeah, he taught me nothing about marketing. Nothing.
I can see that. That's quite evident.
Nothing. He taught me how to kill products that weren't working. And that was important. That was really important. Well, because he taught me how to look at data, analyze it, and create strategies around that. And that helped me understand, to eliminate the things that won't work as well, not be too attached to them. Don't flog a dead horse, basically. I'm sure he'll remember the brand Switzel, which was the brand I was helping manage, and there were many products in there that clearly were not working, but we would try, as brand managers, you'd love for every single baby that you give birth to work. And he's going, you got to kill the ones that don't. Yeah. Sorry, I just kicked that. Camera's moving.
Gerard, would you like to add to this conversation?
Well, look, I mean, I think the
Now
other
we can
things
relax.
are to what Vicky's saying is, we always fall into the trap of, everything's perfect or everything. We're constant optimists. We think everything will work out. So you continue to persevere. And, it's a technique I've always used myself, and that's to force yourself into yes and no answers. Because, you look at it from a perspective of, my friend, he or she is constantly late, but, they're good at this and they're good at that. But, every time I finish meeting with them, I feel negative, et cetera, just as an example. And we put up with that. And so one of the techniques I've always used is say, okay, if you're doing a job, do you need this person in your life? Yes or no? Don't give me all the excuses of, oh yeah, but she rocked up and and he did that. And yes or no? Because it affects you. And the same thing with your products. It doesn't matter if you're marketing a brand, a product, a service, a client, with everything. Ask yourselves those questions because your time is important. And if your time is important, make that hard choice because it's part of your life you'll never get back.
Yeah.
And I think then the other thing from, which I've always wanted to push on and focus on is, issues such as, how do you feel and the confrontations and, Vicky alluded to the body language. People are transparent a lot of the time, and ask them, do you agree? Why do you, and especially if it's a dissension in terms of the points being raised, spend more time with the person who doesn't agree with you because they're seeing something you're not seeing. But if you see it in the light of, oh, that person's just being negative, then you missed an opportunity. And I repeat, you've missed an opportunity to see something that somebody else saw. It's the ones who don't agree with you that matter. I mean, this lovely old boss of mine who I have a great appreciation for everything he taught me. He asked us a question one day and he said, what do you think of this idea? And we all said yes. And he said, great, we're going to break for lunch and you're all fired. So we go, what? He says, well, if all of you agree with me, I don't need you. So by the time you come back to lunch, you've got to find something that isn't working with my idea. And it was a very, and this is a fairly brutal thing, I mean, to say to people, but it stayed with me. It's the ones who don't agree with you that are important, because they're seeing something you haven't seen. So, be curious. And the point about negativity, I think the thing is, everybody gets cheesed off in this world, some, especially in this Instagrammable, Facebook world that we're living in. And the point is, people get so burnt up about issues. And the point is this: if somebody's done something bad to you, or half the time they don't care. So why, and if you don't care about them, and if they're not important to you in your life, why are you burning so much energy for? Let it go. Be selfish in a way and focus on the energy that is going to give you a positive outcome.
See, I think he said that to me like a million times, but I never took it in until much later. That particular seed took a while to grow. Cool. Wow. I'd like to add that the other thing that Gerard really showed me was a different type of leadership. Being in Asia, it was typical that you would say yes to your boss all the time, and you would see your boss above you. And I remember distinctly, he showed me his organizational chart one day, and he flipped it over. He said, actually, the way I see myself is I'm at the bottom supporting all of you. And again, it was so strange, so bizarre in the culture that we were brought up in. So what do you mean? Aren't you meant to be in front, and aren't you meant to be at the top, and we're all serving you? Just, no, it's my job. My job is to support you guys, remove any barriers that you might have to be able to do your job. And that's the other thing that stuck with me. Not so much in my business currently, because I haven't got teams working under me right now, but this carried through when I was in corporate and I had teams below me, that I constantly reminded myself of being the kind of leader that was supportive, not, running off ahead of everyone else. And then when you look back, you realize half, if not all, your team's gone because you have not built that support, that trust, that connection, that bond with all of them. So Gerard took a lot of time to develop trust amongst people. And he was often, certainly for the companies that I work for, he was brought in to make big changes. And when changes are happening, people get very uncomfortable. People feel very threatened. How do you foster trust when there's this air of betrayal going on? So those things, I don't think there is a dot point that I could say, yeah, he taught me that, because it just permeated so many aspects of relationships, of partnerships, of being in business, being in the business of people. Yeah.
Gerard, would you like to speak further to that change management, trust, vulnerability?
Yeah, I mean, look, the principle I've always used is be honest. People aren't stupid, and to Vicky's point about hierarchy, I think the most detrimental thing in organizations is hierarchy. The issue is, I'm not superior to you, and I'm not inferior to you. I just have different skills and a different perspective. And it's a bit like, being with your family, if you've got kids, they're going to give you a lip. If you've got a partner, they're going to talk back to you. But you have that openness in which you can have it. And in organizations, we put on these little masks and these veils, and off we go. But I found always when you're going to make a change, people are a lot smarter than you. They've already worked out why you're there or what's going on. They're not silly. They see the numbers just as anybody in a corner office will. They know, in fact, sometimes they have a better idea of what's going on than sometimes the managers who tend to kid themselves. So I think the thing is, be honest, and the moment you're honest with people and you tell them, look, this is where the position of the business is. We are going to have to make some changes. This is, here's an approach I'm going to take, and I want to have your ideas as well, because I think you can help. And you've got to mean it. Don't ask them their opinions if you're not going to listen to them. And, the moment you start to do that, people know. And I think often, especially when you're making transitions, I mean, somebody asked me the other day, we're going to make a change and three people we're going to lose. So what do we do? So I said, be honest with them. And I don't want to be honest with them because, I only need them for 2 more months. So I said, well, why don't you turn this around and go and say, look, you are going to lose your role. However, I need you to stay for 2 more months. And for that, I'm going to give you a bonus, and you can use that time to go for interviews and do whatever you want, et cetera, et cetera. And they say, oh, but, what happens if they say no? So my response to them, what happens if they say yes? So interesting enough, they went back and tried it, and both 2 of the 3 said yes, and the other one said, I can't stay for the extra 2 months you need, but I can stay for another 4 weeks. So, and it was a win-win all around, because I think people respond to you when you're genuinely honest about issues, and I think we always think that they're not, because the truth's not going to be great. In some cases it isn't. But if you receive that message, you can do something. If you take it in objectively, you can change the outcome. It works for you, right? So those are the principles under which, I was fortunate enough to grow up under, and I've tried to impart on others.
Vicky, did you want to add anything to this?
So much. I'm looking at the time going, do we have more time? Yeah, well, change is something that is constant, that is non-negotiable, that and it's uncomfortable because we're in order to change, we need to step out of the comfort zone. And so that's when people pull on coping mechanisms to react, to respond in ways that perhaps they don't, typically don't show up like that. And how do you learn a whole space with that, Gerard? I mean, it amazes me that when you were so busy, when you were so pressured to meet those, profit lines, those sales, you would still take that time to read the energy of people, to take your time, energy to coach and guide, and listen. And I'm not sure where did that come from?
From my teachers, the people who did the same thing to me.
Wow.
Because there was an arrogant young kid who was in a hurry to get to places and thought his skill levels were better than everybody else, and they weren't. And yet they took the time because for some godforsaken reason, they saw something in me that they thought was worth developing. And so, it was one of those opportunities and those things you learn. And it's that experiential learning that stays with you. It's not the book learning that stays with you.
So isn't that interesting? Because there was a part that we spoke about how, being selfish or self-centered, but at the same time, looking at the bigger picture. It's always been this, how do you balance between the two?
Yeah, but I think, we've got to realize that everything from, relationships to business is a team sport above everything else. It is a team sport. And if you ignore the other parties involved, it'll always end in tears. And so I think, you've got to, no matter what your views and your objectives are, and you need to be single-minded in your career and whatever else you want to achieve in your life. But you need to recognize that, you need others to get there. And those others also have to be part of that journey. So asking people what they think and genuinely following up on what they think is important, because it also benefits you, because you get a perspective that you otherwise wouldn't have had.
Yeah, I remember you were one of them who, well, certainly the higher management that would walk the warehouses, speak to the grassroots, I guess, the lower levels, and even seek their opinion. I remember that. I remember observing that.
But they're not lower levels, Vicky. They're just
no,
people.
They're not. But do you know what I mean?
They're just people, just like me.
They are. But it was, for them, I think you probably touch their hearts too more than they would want to say. That if you would go into the warehouse and speak to the forklift driver, or not be in your ivory tower. Yeah, those were some of the things I observed, and I like to add that you often reminded me people don't listen to what you say; they watch what you do.
Exactly.
That's something that has permeated my parenting tremendously. It's hard
true.
to stay congruent sometimes.
It's very powerful, isn't it?
It is. And the kids these days, they can actually pick up when you're bullshitting them.
Absolutely, and challenge you there and then.
Yeah.
The confidence to speak
and that's
up.
the problem. That's why they say, the problem is there are no children in a boardroom.
No.
Yeah. Sorry?
There are no children in a boardroom. That's the pity, because they'll call out, stupidity any day of the week.
Yeah.
Wow. It's covered a lot.
Yeah.
So, Gerard, how do people contact you these days?
Well, they can contact me through email or my phone, and I'm happy to pass that on. Do you want me to say what it is now? Or?
No, I think we could probably add that in as and when you'd like to, for whatever ways. But those are the only ways? The phone and email?
Yeah, look, I'm on LinkedIn, so if people want to look up my profile on LinkedIn, they can do that as well. So, but I think it's their decision, they've got to realize that they need support and help and perspective. And if that works, I'm happy to help.
Cool. Wonderful. So in closing, thank you both for your time, your valuable time.
Thank you.
And Gerard, if there was one question that I haven't asked today that would actually create for you, what would that question be?
Well, I think the only question is, do you want to be the best you can? And at whatever you do. And that, I think, is always important. That was something my grandparents taught me. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what job you do, but do you want to be the best you can? Because from the moment you're born till and for however long you are on the planet, you've got to look at your life like an open canvas. And what sort of a picture do you want to leave?
Let's hope it's a masterpiece.
That's subjective.
Do you know, I'll add something to that. for the longest time, I was painting the canvas to the expectations of someone else.
Mm.
Oh.
You've got to paint your own canvas.
That's right. I think that was the other thing that I learned through life, that until I discovered that, what was it I was painting and for who?
Yeah.
I wasn't creating for me. I was creating for someone else's expectation of me.
That's the biggest mistake we all make. I mean, we go through life saying, trying to prove to others what our life should be. And, we, at the end of the day, as I've said to you, Vicky, I mean, if the only thing you need to prove to anyone is the people who really love you and respect you. But if they truly loved and respected you, they wouldn't ask you to prove anything to them. I mean, if you've got children, or do you go home and ask them to prove their love to you? Do you ask your parents to prove their love to you? You don't. So who's left?
So
just you.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I hope this was a contribution to you too, Anna.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for your time, and thank you, Vicky, too. And when I'm next in Adelaide, I'll buy you both ladies some lunch.
Oh, well, how does it get any better than that? Such an honour to meet
Booking
you.
him in.
Likewise, Anna. Thank you again to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. I'll end the recording now.